LaMonte Wade Jr. has been the second least valuable position player in baseball. And for a contending Giants team, that is just not going to work. And so it is time to think about trades, and it's time to think about them now.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, hosting this show for over 6 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please just hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show to get these episodes every single weekday. And coming up on today's show, we're going to get to mailbag questions, including viable options for trades, specifically at first base, given what I just said, with Wade being the least valuable position player, or second least valuable in baseball. And then also, should Tyler Fitzgerald potentially move into the leadoff spot? And at what point does Patrick Bailey's bat, which, as we have demonstrated yesterday, has been the worst in baseball by far going back to last August. At what point does his glove make up for that? So we'll get into all of that today. But first, the first base question, which multiple people asked. Fern Dog says, who should the Giants trade for and who should they trade? Sebastian said, players that can be trade targets. I would say a left-handed hitter ideally, a first baseman, and a new backup catcher. For the Bay, 28 said viable trade options at starting pitcher or first base at the deadline. And Dahomey Alex says thoughts on Giants trading for Matt Olson, power first baseman with Bay Area ties. So, all similar questions. Not everyone focuses on first base, but, 3 of the 4 do. And so, I just wanted to point out that by Fangraphs wins above replacement, LaMonte Wade Jr. comes in second to last among all position players, including DHs, just all non-pitchers, I should say, with negative 1.1 Fangraphs wins above replacement. He's hitting 161 with a 270 on base and 263 as the Giants' primary first baseman. And that is not getting it done. And if we look at just, first base by players, like for the Giants, like where do the Giants' first baseman rank in baseball? It's second to last, only ahead of the Colorado Rockies, who are owners of by far the worst record in baseball. And if you look at the bottom teams, it's the Rockies are last, the Giants are second to last, the Pirates third to last, the White Sox fourth last, the Marlins sixth last. So it's a bunch of bad teams and then a contending Giants team. I mean, think what you want about them, but their record is 31-23. And so it's saying even a replacement level player would have added an extra win over LaMonte Wade Jr. so far this year. And I think at this point with Memorial Day behind us, it is time to legitimately look at this situation and what can the Giants do to rectify it. And so all of these questions about trades, I think, are valid at this point. And I just want to emphasize that I mean making a trade potentially before the deadline. I mean, we're like 2 months away from the deadline, and yet, why wait in some cases? And there are 2 players that really stand out, Matt Olson not being one of them for reasons I will explain in just a minute. But I'm looking at the Brewers, who have, according to Fangraphs, 12% playoff odds. And I'm looking at the Orioles, who have, according to Fangraphs, 2.2% playoff odds. And so perhaps the Brewers want to wait this out and they're not ready to trade. Rhys Hoskins is the guy I'm looking at here. Both players I'm looking at have expiring contracts, and that would align with the Giants having a stud position player prospect who plays first base in Bryce Eldridge. And so I think ideally you're looking at a player whose contract would be up at the end of the season. And Rhys Hoskins of the Brewers, and where is he? Where'd my other guy go? Ryan O'Hearn of the Orioles both have contracts that expire at the end of the season. There's a mutual option for Rhys Hoskins, but the Brewers, maybe we should talk about Ryan O'Hearn first. I think that, so the Orioles are surprisingly, probably even to themselves, very much not contending right now. And so when you're a team that doesn't spend a lot of money, and that is the Orioles, and you are in the basement of the American League East at 19-34, they have won 3 straight. Perhaps they want to hang around and see if they can crawl back into this. They're 9 games out of a wild card spot, 14 games out in the division, and Ryan O'Hearn has been one of their best players. So just to give you a little blurb about Ryan O'Hearn, he's a left-handed batter, left-handed thrower. This year he started 22 games at DH, and when I say started, I mean he's just played. Doesn't necessarily mean he started them. 22 games at DH, 11 at first, and 13 in the outfield, with 11 in right and 2 in left. And Ryan O'Hearn, I mean, he has hit very well. 340 batting average, 426 on base, 542 slugging, 1.9 Fangraphs wins above replacement. So that's a net 3-win situation there. If they had Ryan O'Hearn instead of Wade, that kind of means the Giants could be 3 wins better off, which would be a big deal. That would put the Giants at 34-20 and first place in the National League West, just to give you an example. And so, I don't know, is this year just a fluke for Ryan O'Hearn? Well, actually, not really. I mean, the last 3 seasons in Baltimore, counting this year, he's been significantly above average. He doesn't strike out a lot. He does walk a lot. He's walked an increasing amount. I shouldn't say he walks a ton. I mean, but he's someone who's hit for a high batting average and just a good-looking player and a good fit for this team, and someone who can play DH, first base, and the outfield in a pinch would be a good match for this team. And he's on an expiring contract, like I said, and the Orioles are in the position that they're in. So maybe they want to wait a little bit longer. I'm not sure, to see if they're sellers, essentially, but I've got my eye on Ryan O'Hearn of the Baltimore Orioles. He's going to turn 32 in July, just for what it's worth. So Rhys Hoskins is a player who is, I believe he grew up a Giants fan. He's from Northern California. He went to Cal State Sacramento, and the Brewers signed him to this 2-year deal, and last year didn't go so well, but this year Rhys Hoskins is hitting .287 with a .387 on base and a .467 slugging. So it's just been a much better year for Hoskins. I think he would welcome being in the Bay Area. And like I said, the Brewers' playoff odds are significantly lower than the Giants. They are 4.5 back in the wild card and 6.5 back in the division. So they're probably in a position where they don't just want to trade one of their more potent bats right now, but definitely someone to keep an eye on if the Brewers decide to sell. Both of these players, like I said, on expiring contracts, which just makes it a much more viable situation. And even if Bryce Eldridge just tore it up and you wanted to call him up in the middle of the season, you still have the DH spot that's not totally You don't have like a Jorge Soler on your team. You have Wilmer Flores, but Flores has done so well in like a bench role too. So anyway, I just think those two players are the ones that stand out the most when we look at that. So coming up in just a minute, we'll get to more of your questions, including should Tyler Fitzgerald hit leadoff? We'll get to it in just a second, and before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site that's made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you will find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. All right, here we go. We are going to continue answering your questions. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we are going to be getting into Game 2 of this series in Detroit with Logan Webb on the mound. The Giants really need to take advantage of hopefully a good Logan Webb start. And the Tigers going with Jack Flaherty, who hasn't had nearly the success that he had last year. When I just look at the ERA, it's 4.39 without looking too close at the peripheral numbers. So the offense needs to get it going, and hopefully Logan Webb, who had a rough one his last time out, can get back on track, which I would expect that he would. So anyway, I was trying to get the 3-year numbers for Ryan O'Hearn, and it's just not loading on Fangraphs. If it does, I'll report those to you. But he has been a good hitter the last 3 years. Left-handed bat who's historically not done as well against left-handed pitching, but in the last 3 seasons with Baltimore, like 10% above average against lefties and 35% above average against righties. And Rhys Hoskins has historically crushed left-handed pitching, by the way, and the Giants have had their struggles against left-handed pitching this year, as we all know. So I would be more than happy with either of these guys. And like, no offense to LaMonte Wade Jr., it's just like, you can't, like, every game matters. And if the Orioles are willing to deal Ryan O'Hearn right now, I would try to make a move. And in terms of who they should trade, I think the Giants have plenty of guys who would be of interest to a team like the Orioles or a team like the Brewers. It just, I mean, there's so many. I don't know if you're for a rental player. When I say a rental player, I mean these guys who are on expiring contracts and they're not superstars. I don't know if I would consider trading, a Luis Matos or a Marco Luciano or anything like that. But the Giants have a lot of good, talented pitching depth. There's definitely, these are acquirable players. Like, I don't know, Keaton Wynn. I don't know, just Mason Black. Throwing a name. The Orioles desperately need pitching, and the Giants have it, so that could be a good match. And it wouldn't cost a ton because you're talking about a rental player who's only under contract for a few more months. Anyway, moving on. Sebastian says, actually, I forgot that I wanted to get to Sebastian's question, but we didn't tease it yet, so I'll put that in next after this one about Tyler Fitzgerald. Go Fishing California says, Ben, what do you think about putting Fitzgerald in the leadoff spot for a while? I know he strikes out a bit too much, but he does have a .339 on base percentage. He's really the only base stealing threat on the team. maybe this could jumpstart the offense. So my initial thought when I look at the Giants' normal lineup, which goes Mike Yastrzemski, who's been hitting leadoff for a while now, Elliot Ramos, Jung-Hoo Lee, Wilmer Flores, Matt Chapman, Willie Adames, LaMonte Wade, Patrick Bailey, and Tyler Fitzgerald. It's kind of the classic lineup against a right-handed pitcher. Something I don't love is that I've said this all season. I don't really love how Tyler Fitzgerald has been one of their better bats when you look at the last 2 seasons combined specifically. And yet you're hitting him ninth when you have guys who are really struggling hitting ahead of him, like Wade, Bailey, and even Adames in this case. So moving him up, I don't know that I would want him hitting first for the simple reason that I don't know that he's going to keep this up when it comes to on base, and I don't believe I don't think he's proven himself sufficiently as an above average hitter. And just by way of example, this year against right-handed pitching, he's been 15% below average. In his career against right-handed pitching, he's got a 311 on base percentage. And so most of that on base success has come against left-handed pitching. So yeah, I mean, in his career against left-handed pitching, he's hitting 310 with a 361 on base and 561 slugging, 155 weighted runs created plus, a 402 batting average on balls in play, which I would expect for sure to come down, 252 isolated power. So for sure against lefties, I would like to see him hit higher in the lineup. But against righties, I just am not convinced that he's going to be good enough to that you would want him hitting first. I mean, you mentioned on base, and at the time of the question, did you say 339 on base? I believe that I totally, of course, believe you were right at the time, but now it's down to 328, and I don't know, projections don't really buy yet Tyler Fitzgerald being an above average hitter. And so, I don't know, against lefties, I'd like to see him in the top half of the lineup, and maybe even leadoff. And I don't know, Elliot Ramos second. I like Ramos hitting up at the top as well. The problem is when a righty comes in later in the game, then you're stuck with Fitzgerald hitting first, which I don't love. And I just want to add that I really don't believe that, in the traditional leadoff hitter stealing bases, that's that important. It's just, I mean, if you look across the league, you look at some of the most successful teams, leadoff hitters being stolen base threats is not really that big of a thing anymore. I mean, I believe, actually he doesn't anymore, but Kyle Schwarber used to lead off for the Phillies and other teams as well. And I'm forgetting who I want to use as the best examples here. But if we look, I mean, the Detroit Tigers, Kerry Carpenter hits leadoff, and I don't believe he's a big stolen base threat. And I'm just using, he's got 1 steal this year, 0 last year. You just kind of want your best hitters at the top, in my opinion, because that spot comes up the most. If the lineup turns over and it's the 9th inning with 2 outs and the lineup flips, and it's the higher you hit in the lineup, the more you hit over the course of a season. And so I want my very best hitters stacked at the top. And I want my worst hitters at the bottom. And that's why I think Fitzgerald is too low hitting 9th. When you talk about Bailey and Wade have been so bad offensively. Bailey, the worst hitter in baseball going back to last August, and maybe even further, because if you go back to last August 1st, we discussed this yesterday, but he's been 29 percentage points worse than the next closest hitter by weighted runs created plus among hitters with just a mere 250 plate appearances at least. And so that's every regular player and then some. And Bailey has not even been close to the next worst offensive player. And so to me, he should be hitting 9th. And so they've got this thing going where they're putting their kind of worst hitters 7th and 8th, and then they like this kind of second leadoff thing with Fitzgerald 9th. I don't know that I agree with that. I think it means fewer at bats for Fitzgerald. When you have him, if you hit him 6th or 7th, you'd be getting him an extra like 60 plate appearances a year. That spot comes up less, and you're getting more Bailey and less Fitzgerald. When you hit him, it adds up a little bit at a time over the course of a season. So that's my thoughts on that. Against lefties, you can definitely make the argument to me, but against righties, I'd 7th or something like that. But they're trying to break up the righties, so I get it. They've got like Ramos and, they've got like Chapman and Adames and Flores kind of back to back to back right now, and then Wade breaks them up. So at least put Fitzgerald 8th and then Bailey 9th. I get why they're not doing it. It has to do with that second leadoff type thing where you don't want an automatic out hitting right in front of the top of your lineup. However, I want more plate appearances for Fitzgerald and fewer for Bailey at this point. So speaking of Patrick Bailey, we're going to get into a question about his glove and at what point is this anemic bat outweighing the positives of the glove. But also, we're going to get to this question about, is it time to make other roster moves, not counting trades necessarily, but sending players down, calling certain players up? Are there any moves to make for this Giants team after 2 months of the season? So we'll get to those questions in just a minute. And before we do, all right, as promised, we're going to get to more of your questions. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we'll be breaking down this afternoon's game with Logan Webb on the mound and Jack Flaherty opposing the Giants hitters. Hopefully they can get it going. They have had just a really tough time ever since they scored 9 against the A's. That was the 3-homer game by Wilmer Flores. Since then, they have just not had an easy time scoring at all, but they're still 5-4 in those 9 games since because they've pitched so well. So we'll see if they can continue to pitch well and maybe just come through a little bit with the bats today, and we'll be breaking it down tomorrow. So the next question comes from Sebastian, who says, with 2 months in, there need to be some changes, either with trades or sending hitters down / DFA them. So I suppose that actually isn't a question. That's just a statement. But you do mention trades, and we discussed that. I think the real obvious spot, and there's really no other obvious spot, is first base / DH, but pretty much first base because you can kind of stick whoever at DH. But at first base, they don't really have an answer. You put Flores out there, I guess, and they do have Gerard Encarnacion coming down the line here as he rehabs from this hand injury fracture that he sustained in spring training. But nonetheless, I don't think acquiring a first baseman would block even Gerard Encarnacion. So I just thought this was an interesting question because you mentioned sending hitters down or DFAing them. One thing to point out is that LaMonte Wade Jr. can't be sent down. He has over 5 years of service time, so he's ineligible to be optioned. I don't think he had minor league options anyway, even if he had less than 5 years of service time. He may have, but I don't think so. In terms of other players who could be optioned, we're talking Patrick Bailey, Tyler Fitzgerald, Casey Schmidt, Christian Koss, and Luis Matos. And so there is some room there, especially when I look at the bench. And when we talk about Christian Koss and Luis Matos, Christian Koss just doesn't play, when there's a lefty on the mound, even when there is, where's he supposed to play? Was he supposed to play when giving Tyler Fitzgerald the day off? Because I don't want Fitzgerald out of there when there's a lefty on the mound, because he does really well against lefties. And so it's I don't love the way that they've constructed their bench. I think as much as there was moaning and groaning, and rightfully so, about the platooning and all that, this way isn't as effective, and it keeps your bench players from playing enough. So we don't see enough of Casey Schmidt or Christian Koss or Luis Matos, nor is that exactly the collection of bench players that inspires a ton of confidence. But the guy who stands out is Luis Matos because he has played the most out of any of those guys. And it's just, he's been very, like, he hasn't performed, and it's been a consistent issue. And so when we talk about potential trade candidates, I mean, he comes up as someone who comes to mind. In his career now, he's amassed almost a full season of work, 144 games, and minus 1.7 Fangraphs wins above replacement. So he's done poorly defensively. We saw that in yesterday's game in Detroit. He hasn't hit. He's hitting 147 with a 194 on base and 309 slugging. He doesn't strike out, so he's got that going for him, but he just doesn't make great contact. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say. He's still a young player. I'm not saying give up on Luis Matos, but he only has one minor league option remaining. I don't know what exactly you do, but you certainly could consider calling up somebody else. But I've looked through their minor league numbers, like players in the minor leagues, and is there anyone, like, is Luciano tearing it up? No. Is, like, Wade Meckler tearing it up? I didn't even see him, so I'm guessing no. He's only played in 2 games in AAA and 3 in the Complex League. I don't know what's going on with Wade Meckler. His last game played was May 23rd. So, yeah, he didn't play from March until May. I'm not sure what's going on with him physically, but undisclosed injury. So I don't see an obvious answer here. If we want to talk about, it's time to call up Bryce Eldridge, I don't think it is, but he is doing well in AA. There are some guys who are interesting to me, but no one seems like a call-up candidate right now. And so you're kind of just stuck with the players you have for now. Although if you make a trade or something, you could certainly include Wade in the trade, or you could just DFA LaMonte Wade Jr., who is also a free agent at the end of the year. And so it wouldn't be, I don't want to say it wouldn't be a huge loss. It would mean something, and this is a person we're talking about. But if you were to acquire a first baseman, you can't option Wade. And so just DFAing him could be the move. But you could also just include him in the trade so that team has a first baseman if they would like. But I don't think he has hardly any value at this point, given he's on an expiring contract and he's been, like I said, the second worst hitter in baseball this year by Fangraphs wins above replacement. So the final question comes from Tim, who says, at what point does Patrick Bailey's offensive shortcomings start to outweigh his defensive excellence? Realistically, how much more value does he have over a catcher that's much closer to average on both offense and defense? So that's a good question. The answer, I guess, like if you want to just put it in simple, quantifiable terms, is that he's still somehow been an above average. When I say above average, he's been above replacement level as a catcher, despite being by far the worst hitter in baseball since August. He's put up 1 win above replacement since August, despite being far and away the worst offensive player in baseball. And so what that says to me, I mean, is that, first of all, if we look at this season, Giants catchers, they rank 22nd in Fangraphs wins above replacement. So even with, let's see, their hitting has been the worst by 20 percentage points at the catcher position. They have a 44 weighted runs created plus, 175 batting average, which is second to last, 235 on base, which is last by 32 points, and a 277 slugging, which is second to last. Yet by defensive runs above average, they're second at the position, second best. And so they're not at the point where I guess he would have to be even worse, which is saying quite a bit about how much value Bailey provides defensively. But realistically, this is not ideal. Like, realistically, you need to hit better than 65 points below average to be a major league player, usually. And the thing is, in his career, Bailey's got a 73 weighted runs created plus, which is not good, yet he's put up 7.6 Fangraphs wins above replacement during that time, his career. So if we do 7.6 and divide it by 951 plate appearances, which is what he's had in his career, and we say, okay, multiply that by 600, which is kind of the number used to equate to a full season of work, and it's a 4.8. That would be 4.8 Fangraphs wins above replacement in 600 plate appearances, which is like all-star level play. So if he could just be 25% below average, which is 27% below average, which is what he's been in his career, he's still like an all-star caliber player by this metric, which I think is the best we have for evaluating a catcher, because it's really important that we understand the defensive value that a catcher provides. And so I'm definitely not giving up on Bailey, but ideally he just regresses to his career norms. And when I say regress, I do mean like in the positive direction. That's a statistical term. Some people give me a hard time about saying regress positively, but that's what it's called. Anyway, if he could just be that instead of what he's been this year, which is significantly worse than what he's done in his career, then he's a like star, even though he can't hit or like struggles to hit. And in the 2 seasons before this one, he was hot to start the year and then cooled off as the season wore on. So hopefully this year it's the opposite, where he gets hot now, because it's been a real struggle, like major struggle for the last 4+ months. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter/X at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot. So thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening today. You are now Locked On Giants.